Hey guys, and welcome back to the Diaries of the Neurospicy Coach. I believe this is episode 10 now. And today I want to cover why sports can be a blessing and a curse for a neurodivergent brain. As always, I've got my trusty notes because there's so much I want to cover in this. And I will be mostly talking about like bodybuilding because obviously I am a bodybuilder. But this can go for any sort of sport, like competitive sport. So the hyperfocus of a superpower is literally our superpower, right? So as I said, I'll use prep for bodybuilding as an example because obviously I know it inside and out because I am an athlete. But obviously with prep, it becomes our whole personality. Like we thrive in prep. Everything else just gets, you basically have like tunnel vision, like everything else gets blurred out. Like we don't really think about anything else. Like we wake up and we know exactly what we're doing when, and it's just a structure that we literally thrive off, but it's not too much structure where we feel trapped, because also when we have too much structure that can happen. But when it comes to competitive sports and that adrenaline's there, we don't feel trapped, we literally thrive from it, right? So it's having like a deadline as well. So for example, with prep, we know when our shows are. We know exactly like the timeline. We know when we start prep. We know when we finish prep. And we know when the shows are and things like that. So there's a timeline. So it just adds dopamine because it's that bit of pressure, not too much pressure where we run away from it, but it's like that adrenaline pressure where it's exciting. And obviously with prep, it's exciting because you do see changes on a weekly basis because things happen fast on a prep because obviously we go all in. And obviously then with prep, then obviously RSD can also like creep into it as well. So it's obviously the good of obviously having the structure, feeling like we thrive in, feel like we are basically functioning. It literally makes us function, which is insane because obviously preps are really hard. But then obviously the downside of that is RSD. So how does that come in? Feedback, right? So whether that's like feedback from the judges, whether that's feedback from your coach, and it doesn't necessarily need to be like bad feedback. It can be anything and it can be a trigger for us. But I'll give you an example of like the judges. I remember my first, like if you've been following me for a while, you'll see the journey that I went on for my pro card. It was mental. But the first part of that, RSD was a massive, massive thing for me that I knew I had to overcome because I've been competing for 7 years. I've had feedback, I've took it on, but for some reason it really hit home. And I think it's because I really wanted my pro card. I really wanted it. And it wasn't the sort of feedback that you'd think either. It wasn't like, not good enough, not this, not that. It was a feedback of like, yeah, all good, just keep going. And I just felt rejected because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm at my best because they're telling me that I am, but I'm still not the best. So I almost wanted feedback. I almost wanted them to say like, do you know what, like you look really good, but just a little bit more conditioning or a little bit more glute or a little bit something that I could be like, yes, okay, I'm going to take that and run with it and I'm going to work on it. It was, you're good, you're great, like keep going, keep going. And in my head I kept thinking, oh my gosh, like these girls are eating me alive. I'm at my very best. There's no way where I can go from there. But obviously as an amateur, you expect to have a lot of feedback because you're an amateur. Of course you're not there yet. Most pros are not there yet. There's very little bikini athletes, like in the Olympia, for example, who are there. They still have tweaks and things like that to go on. And even when they are there, it's like a peaking issue. So they need to like be fuller. They need to be, leaner, whatever it is. It's nothing to do with muscle. But obviously as an amateur, they will literally break down your physique. And sometimes that can feel like, that can feel too much. And I know for a lot of ADHD women, and they might not even know they're ADHD either, that is enough for them never to get back on stage either, because obviously it hits home. And it's it feels a stab at us as a person. And then we've got why neurodivergent athletes are also misread as intense, difficult, or like over dramatic. And I honestly, like, I know this better than anyone because I am neurodivergent as well. But for some clients, like I've had a lot of posing clients come through and they will literally cry in their posing sessions because they're tired and things like that. Do I judge that? No, because I know what those emotions are. Like, as you get closer to stage, your emotions are running so high, like so high, and having different emotions hit us, like adrenaline, like, is that even emotion? It sort of is, because when adrenaline's pumping, because you feel like you can't breathe because you're just like and then obviously you've got excitement, you've got like feeling like gratitude because like, oh my god, I done it, like you're proud, and all those emotions can sort of like hit at once. So sometimes we can internalize that, but sometimes we can also externalize that. So as I said, like, I've had girlies come in for posing, and for maybe someone who is neurotypical, it looks like they're having a full-on tantrum. That's what it looks like. But because I am neurodivergent and I understand these feelings, I know it's not. I know they are overwhelmed. I know that they are just feeling a lot and they just need to take a breather, you know? Because as I said, like, these emotions and feelings can be a lot. And then, for some coaches, we are then labeled as like, oh, she's so hard work, or she's dramatic, she cries at everything. Do you know what I mean? I've even had clients who've come off stage and have literally booted off because they've not placed where they thought they were going to place. And again, that can obviously come across as like, whoa. But again, being neurodivergent, we some people are better at masking than others, so even if that person didn't, like, if she did mask, she would have had that internally, but she obviously didn't want to mask that day, and it was very external, everyone heard about it, and then you sort of look at that person and think, oh, she's a really bad sport, like, she shouldn't be in this. But again, it's just emotions that we feel, and as I said, a lot of women are not diagnosed, and if they don't get a place and they want, they'll cry. Like, I honestly cried so many times when I didn't get it, and honestly every time got much better, because I realized, like, okay, it's not even to do with me. Like, obviously it is, obviously, but I started realizing that, like, I could be my best and I could be really lean and I could be what I think is really good and what a judge told me to come in 2 weeks ago. But if everyone comes in softer, fuller, and it's not what I am, I'm not gonna win, so it's like one of those things, right? So as I said, like, I've had loads of coaches, not just me, but like clients have come to me and they said, like, oh, my coach said I'm too much and whatever, and that just makes us feel rubbish, right? So what you need to do, I don't know if you can see Theo, he's kicking off at Emily because Emily's not giving him any attention. So what I'm going to do, right, I'm going to go through all of these, and how to help, right? Because I want to show you how to drive without letting the sport consume you, because it does. Like, for me, it did, especially when I chased my pro card. I allowed it to consume my whole entire life. I was probably a bit better then, but looking back at my early days, where, if you've listened to my other podcasts, you'll know what I mean by this. It was my savior. So I made it my whole identity, and I made it my whole personality, because I genuinely didn't have anything else. Like, I didn't really have any friends at that time, because I was down in Kent on my own. I didn't really have people around me. So I really leaned into bodybuilding as a savior to keep me going. So it was my whole identity. But the thing is, for example, when I had a gut issue last year, and I couldn't do bodybuilding, I was lost, because my whole personality, my whole being is bodybuilding. And at the end of the day, bodybuilding is a lifestyle. So when you do make it your whole life and it does get stripped away for whatever reason, because it can, like, oh God, I know so many people who've had to stop bodybuilding because of health issues and stuff like that. Not necessarily because bodybuilding caused it, but they've had underlying issues that they didn't know about, especially like females when they've got like autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Never mind, Ted. Come on, Ted. Come on. It's not a podcast, is it, without a dog barking? So what we're going to do, right? We're going to create an identity outside of the sport. This is something I've had to really work on during my gut healing process, because I was so depressed. And I think, to be honest, it's probably not even just bodybuilding. I couldn't train. And I felt really lost as well, because obviously I couldn't even be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go with my friends and I'm going to go for nice food, because I couldn't do any of those things. But I think if I did create more of a life outside bodybuilding, I probably would have been a bit better. Like this year, as I said in my last podcast, I'm going on holidays this year. I'm doing a lot more because I'm used to having a rigid routine. I know what to expect. But as I said, last year really opened my eyes to be like, you need to have another life outside of bodybuilding. So I wrote here, like, if your entire self-worth comes from training, you know, physique or your placings, every setback is going to feel like a threat. And it is. Like, if you are going into every show being like, I'm going to win, or I'm going to win an overall, I'm going to do this. Because at the end of the day, you shouldn't have any expectations when you come into competing, none at all. So if you are going in with that mindset of like, you know, I deserve this, you know, I've worked really hard, and then obviously don't get the placing that you want, you are going to be really upset by that, and you are going to just want to have 2 minutes away from your coach. I've seen girlies leave their coaches over stuff like this, which makes me sad, because obviously when you realise that, like, it's not that your coach have done a bad job with you, unfortunately there'll always be someone who is better. You know, there'll always be someone who's leaner, and you might be lean and they're not looking for lean on that day. You might come in fuller, they might not want a full look on that day. You know, it's literally subjective. And if you tie your whole self-worth to it, you're going to have like a bad time. Do you know what I mean? So I wrote like questions, because I thought when I did the question one, I had a good feedback that girlies, you're all doing it, and it helped you. So like, to ask yourself, who am I when I'm not an athlete? You know, like, you know, you're a friend, you know, you're a dog mom, cat mom, whatever you are, you know, what do you enjoy except for training, right? What else brings you joy? Do you have any other hobbies? Like, I know loads of girlies now, they're doing like heels classes, they're doing pole fitness, they're doing other things outside of just training. They're doing like Pilates and stuff like that, which is amazing, because it's just giving you another lease of life, that, you know, bodybuilding and training shouldn't be your whole identity. And then what else would people describe me as well? Because I think that's a really good one, because it makes you then think like, oh, because I know for me, if people have seen, you know, me and what my day-to-day look like, I know people probably think I'm boring, you know, and I know I'm not boring, but my life seemed very boring. And to be honest, you know, all I do is work, train, work, train, work, train. And, you know, it's like, I am coming across quite vanilla, you know. And as I said, like the healthiest athletes have multiple identities, right? I don't like the term identity, but it is. You have multiple things going on that people can identify you as, you know, oh, the person who is the Pilates girl and she does bodybuilding, and, you know, that she's a dog mom, or, you know, she's got a lot of things going on, because putting all your eggs in one basket, it's just never going to end well. If, as I said, like for me, for example, I was out for 10 minutes because of a gut issue, I couldn't help that. That just happened. So, I mean, it forced me then to be like, what else do I enjoy in this life then, should we say? Because it's a very short life that we have, you know. This is a really important one as well, right? Schedule recovery with the same intensity as your training. None of my girls like resting, but obviously the longer they're with me and they identify why rest is so important, it massively helps. Because as we know, like in my last podcast, I talk like we are more prone to burnout, because we are, and it's usually as well because we don't do rest, or we might not identify the burnout to sort of come in, like the early stages of it. And it's usually because we don't like rest, so we just do lots of things. So as I said, like, it's good to have other hobbies, but like, for example, if you're going to do training 5 days a week, and then you're going to do pole twice a week, and then you're going to do Pilates twice a week, like, you're overdoing it, you know, and then mix working with that as well. You're going to be burnt out. So as much as like you might find it's exciting, you need to ensure you are resting and scheduling it, you know, because we don't naturally just switch off. We just don't. So you just don't want to wait until you're burnt out, because as I said before, like, once burnout happens, it's not like, okay, I'll rest now, because that one rest day is not going to do anything. You know, you might be burnt out for weeks and you feel depressed and things like that. So schedule your rest days, you know, go for a walk without your phone, or like go for a walk, whether it's like on your own or with someone. If you're really burnt out, you're probably not going to want to be around anyone. So just have, you know, if you're going to bring your phone, listen to a podcast, rather than, just something that like fills your cup and doesn't drain you. And you can just really have that time to check in with yourself, because we don't tend to do that. You can have time with friends if you're not too burnt out though, because again, like when you're burnt out, you don't want to be around anyone. So by pre-planning things like, go for a coffee with my friends, or right, I'm definitely going to rest on these days and this is what it's going to look like. I'm filling with days where it's going to be like, go for a food shop. So you're still doing something. You're not just in the house sitting here doing nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's like an active rest day that I like to call it. And do things that are like unrelated to fitness as well, because I'm lucky that I do have some friends in the fitness world. Well, all my friends, to be honest, are into the fitness world, but I do have friends who are not bodybuilders and they're not into competitive things. So in their free time, they absolutely don't want to go to the gym. They don't want to go, gym hopping. That's not what they want to do. So it's nice to have friends as well to force you to rest, because when I first met Ben, that's the one thing that I loved that I never had, was having a partner who doesn't do bodybuilding, who doesn't compete. He made me have those rests, because I remember when I first met Ben, I felt guilty for like just sitting down and watching telly and things like that, but he forced me to do normal people things. And it's like really important to do that, right? Stop consuming fitness content 24/7, right? Because even though we're like, oh, you love it, whatever, that's absolutely fine, but doing it all the time, when you're in like those lower moments as well, this is where the comparison is literally the thief of joy, and that way, where that literally does come in. Because do you know when you're in your luteal phase, like you feel not very confident, you feel like an ugly blob, like you just do. You feel like you have imposter syndrome and things like that. So when we then are looking at fitness content and someone pops up, you start comparing yourself. And we all know social media is not real, but somehow when it comes to us, we're like, oh God, she looks unreal and I don't look like that. Oh my God, I've been training for 3 years. She's been training for 6 months and she looks better than me. That's where that comes in as well. So it's like, even though fitness content can be fun and you enjoy it, try not to make it everything, especially if you don't prep. Please don't do that. I say to my girls all the time, right, delete that person, block that person. And honestly, and I know that sounds probably harsh, but it's not. I literally know someone that I know of, I'd say hi if I saw her. One of my friends mentioned it and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a look at her Instagram page. She'd blocked me. And at first I was like, oh God, why is she, what have I done? Have I hurt her feelings? Like, I don't think I have, but then I realised she competed against me, and obviously she blocked me because she knew that I was up against her. She was obviously feeling some kind of way towards me, so she blocked me, and then she unfollowed me after the season. And did that bother me? At first, yeah, because I didn't know why. Obviously, I thought, oh God, have I done something to upset her, whatever. Not that I really cared, because I'm like, I can't help what I do. If my Instagram offends you, just unfollow me. And that's obviously what she did. But when I realised she followed me back, I was like, all right, okay, she did it because obviously I was obviously a trigger for her. So don't be afraid to block, delete, mute anyone. So as I said, like most of us, obviously we train, we watch fitness videos, we listen to fitness podcasts, we listen to YouTubes, we follow fitness influencers, talk about fitness all evening, and honestly it can be draining, right? So talk about something else, do something else. Do you know what I mean? Like you should have like off duty hours, just to make sure that, your whole entire life is not consumed about fitness. Because some of it, as I said, can be good because it's educational. But a lot of fitness influencers, they're not really putting education out. It's usually a new gym set and it's usually them looking absolutely perfect. Like you don't really see fitness influencers or any influencer really looking ugly, or do you know what I mean? They're there to influence you to buy things, so it's like you want to think that these people are the perfect people. So especially on those down days, just make sure that you just don't do that, just watch some Netflix, watch a good series or something, just let your brain have a day off. And then separate your worth from your results, right? So as I mentioned before, you can follow the plan perfectly, you can improve massively, and you can still lose, because it's not about you. Do you know what I mean? It is about you fitting the criteria as best as you possibly can. Now you could fit in 90% of the 90% of the criteria, but the thing is about that is every judge has a different opinion on what the criteria is, right? Like today I seen something on Fit Model. They want you to be, what did he say? I want you to be soft, but not too conditioned. And you're like, right, so you don't want me to be soft, but you don't want me to be conditioned. Like what? So it's like every judge is going to have a different perspective of what the criteria is. And that's what you got to think of. Like you can take a judge's feedback and literally implement it perfectly and be like, yeah, that's exactly the look that he wants. But then guess what? Someone next week wants you to be really, really lean, really hard, because I've had that. And then you might come last. Like it's not in your control, right? So neurodivergent brains often struggle with like black and white thinking. Like I definitely do. Like I know I'll put my hands up and I definitely do. And chasing my pro card made me see it in a different light completely, but it was for the better, because I always used to be like, oh, you're not working hard enough. There's people probably pushing harder and whatever. But, without brains, usually it's like when you're successful, lose, you failed. And that's not it. Like one of my clients, she came second place and she was absolutely destroyed by it. Destroyed. Like, and I just thought, wow, second place is freaking really good, actually. Like, my first seasons, yes, I won the overall in my first show, but then I came dead last. Then I came dead last again, and then I came third. Like I was never it wasn't until like my third year, I think, competing, maybe my fourth, that I was winning shows. And I just thought it's a journey. Like you have to get to that level, but we just think, okay, well if we come second, it is a lose. But I will say, when I did chase my pro card, I did have that mindset. But I do think it is relevant, because at the end of the day, I'm coming for my pro card. So if I place second, that is a loss to me, because obviously that's not giving me the opportunity to go and have a dance in the overall to try and fight for that, So it's like, if the bare minimum you need to chase your pro card is to win your class. But as an amateur, I never thought that. Like my mindset, I believe that it was really good. Like I just wanted top 3. I was like, if I get top 3, that's sick. Especially if it was like a big lineup as well. And as like success should be measured by behaviors and not outcomes. And I so believe that. Like what I got into the habit of, because again, when you chase your pro card, it is a little bit different. And especially if it's in between shows, I would just compare myself to the previous time. And sometimes, because we would take on judges' feedback, it would look different. So sometimes I wouldn't look better than before, but that wasn't my coach's fault. But a lot of neurodivergent brains, we need someone to blame. We need to be like, oh, well, my coach did this to me. Like for Josh, for example, my coach, he would listen to the feedback and he would put it into play. But I might not like that. So in my head, I'm like, oh, I didn't really like that look, but it's what the judges want. And then I might not do well. But I'm not going to sit and blame Josh because he just listened to my feedback. Do you know what I mean? But for a neurodivergent brain, if we don't have that understanding of what, how competing works, we can blame our coach. As I said, I've seen it time and time again where clients are leaving their coaches over this. And I just think it's a bit sad, because the amount of time and effort they put in, Watch for hyperfocus becoming an obsession. So you can ask yourself, like, am I pursuing excellence, or am I trying to control my anxiety? And I think they are such deep questions to ask, because like the line is thinner than most athletes like realize from being obsessed with it. Like I know, and I'll put my hands up, it become an obsession. Ted, sorry if that scared anyone. For me, it was becoming an obsession because I really wanted it in a hyper focus, and I probably should have called it a day way before my last show. But I wanted it. I was like, no, if I don't get it, I failed. But that's not true. And I know that now. Because obviously different shows like just came in differently. But as I said, like I did become obsessed with it. And that's why the following year when I competed, I said to myself, like, you got 2 pro qualifiers and that's it. Because with the hyper focus, I would have allowed myself to keep going and going and going and going, instead of being like, do you know what? It's not my time. Call it a day. Refresh yourself, go back into a building phase and then go again. Obviously, I'm glad I did have that hyper focus because I did eventually get in the end. But when I was looking at my physique at that time, I was just tired. My physique looked tired. I should have just called it a day and then just had a little bit of a longer time in a maintenance, Build a nervous system toolkit as well. So like not everything needs to be productive, because our brains tells us we need that, because if we're not productive, we fail in, and one of my clients said this to me. She was like, I just don't feel like you know, I feel a bit lazy, you know, if I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, I just feel like I'm just not going to get anywhere in life. And I'm like, okay, so if you're burnt out, where are we going? If you're burnt out, you know, you're not going to show up for your girls. You're not going to show up to your gym session. So I was like, you definitely won't be winning if you're burnt out. But a lot of us don't realize that because we're so hard on ourselves, and it does come under RSD as well. So things that can regulate your nervous system, which I bullet pointed. So my favorite one is colouring, right? I love colouring. It's something that I randomly just fell into when I went for one of my shows. I think it was in France I went to. And I went to the shop and I was really overwhelmed. And I was just like, oh, I just need something. And I saw like a Disney colouring book and I thought, oh, I fancy doing that. And honestly, it was the first night that I was able to sleep a day before show. And I just did it because obviously it keeps your mind busy, but it's not like you're not using your brain, if that makes sense. Like you're not like you actively using it, you're just making sure you color it in between the lines. And I just thought it was such a good way of stimulating my brain, especially when I'm anxious. So if I'm anxious or like, you know, I'm worried about something, Ben will literally say to me like, oh, do you want your colouring books? And I'm like, yeah. It's like such a control for me now in this household, and everyone knows my mum bought me like colouring books and pens for Christmas. Shein do really good ones, by the way, good pens. But you can do reading. Like reading for me doesn't work. I can try, and I've literally bought so many books, and I just read a few pages and then I can't be asked for it, because when we are tired and when we're like exhausted, the last thing we want to do is focus on trying to take in words. It can be crafting, it can be like, you know, doing games, going out in nature. You can listen to music, and music is another one for me. I like, and I actually, it was quite funny actually seeing something. I love techno, and I don't know why, but I've always found that not relaxes me as such, but it just turns my brain off. And I actually seen something about techno the other day actually, because it's like the high like beats per minute for an ADHD brain, like it helps calm us or something. And I found it really like, oh, okay, rather than listening like to sad songs, because if I listen to sad songs it makes me depressed. Times with animals as well. Like we bought both our dogs for the fact that I work at home on my own and I can get quite depressed. So they are literally my emotional support dogs, and I do call them, you know, my mental health dogs, because that's literally what I bought them for. Just look at them when they've been good, especially Theo. I can't believe Theo is there actually, because normally he's the one who's... It's Ted today. Ted! Normally Ted's a really good boy, and today's Theo. Have 2 minutes, please, Ted. And then gentle movement. So like loads of my girlies have been getting into like yoga and stuff. Like you can do Pilates, but I feel like with yoga, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure yoga is more with the mind. So loads of my girlies have been doing yoga. So activities with no outcome attached can be incredibly therapeutic for our neurodivergent brain. Because we don't expect anything. We can't get disappointed by it because we know what we're doing. If we start colouring a book, you know, what's the end outcome? You're gonna have a pretty coloured page. You know, if you go out for a walk, you know, what's the outcome? That you're just gonna feel really refreshed. He picked his head up then because he knows that word. So yeah, learning the difference between drive and urgency as well. So like drive says, I'm committed to this goal. Urgency says, if I stop for a second, everything will fall apart. And that's why, again, like sometimes people will get burnt out in prep. So like I recognize when my girlies are prepping for the wrong reasons. Like I know I did 1 year when I got out of an abusive relationship. I literally fled my home like 3 weeks out, and I was fine. What I thought I was fine, but really I was so tunnel visioned. I was just like, yeah, you know, and I'd been with this person since the age of 14, you know, so the fact that I was just fine, like everyone's like, you sure you're fine? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I feel absolutely fine. Like I just didn't address it until after when post show hits, and then it's like, oh, okay then, do you know what I mean? So it's like, but I believe that if I stopped my prep, I knew deep down that those emotions were going to hit me in the face. But sometimes if my girlies are starting prep and I know that they've got a lot going on at home, I'm like, no, because I know they'll thrive in there, but they'll be thriving for the wrong reasons. And this is where burnout massively happens, because we end up masking the whole of your prep. So you can love something without thinking about it 24 hours of the day, right? You know, like obviously I know we all have our passions, and, you know, like especially me, like my whole entire life is competing because it's my job. I do posing lessons, you know, I do my own posing with my posing coach. I have my own prep coach. You know, I'm around it 24/7. Obviously it's my job. I love it, but it's important not to consume that. Like, as I said, like before I met Ben, like when I look back, my life was mad. Like, I'm like, wow, right, that's really overstimulated. I didn't even know how I was doing that. But I'd be going to bed like 1 a.m. because if I weren't living it, I was studying about it. And I remember doing like, I don't know if anybody like due through university, I did the male module. I didn't even know why, because I didn't even coach males, but I just did it anyway because I was like, no, I need to know everything. I need to know everything. And then I do the female module. So I'd be going to bed at like, oh God, like 1 a.m. some days, and I'd be up at 5. And my whole life revolved around competing. So I'd literally wake up, 2 check-ins, go to the gym, eat my meals, wouldn't see anyone. I'd sit there on my brother's coffee table, which he hated. By the way, he put in his wedding speech about me taking up his kitchen, and I would be revising, and then I'd be literally doing my steps whilst revising. I'd be running on the spot, and like my whole life. And I remember when Ben came to stay, when we for like early days of dating, I could just see he was just like, oh wow, like this is intense, you know. He'd be like, oh, let's go and watch a film. And I would be fidgeting. And I just be like, I'm sorry, I can't do this, I need to be doing this. But I generally believed if I weren't doing that, I wasn't gonna make it. And that's just insane. Whereas now, you know, we'll do things on the weekends, and you know, we might train in the mornings, but then we'll go do other things. Whereas before, I would never leave the house ever because I felt like I was going to fail. So one of the biggest lessons in competitive sport is learning that obsession isn't the same as commitment. It's not. And sometimes we don't realize this obsession until we step out of it. And some people will say it's obsession even when it's not sometimes, because if someone doesn't even train, I know the life I live, people will say, oh, she's obsessed, but I don't believe I am, because if I, you know, especially in my off season and stuff, like if I want to have a biscuit, I'll have one. If I want to go for a coffee, I'll go for one. Like, I'm not like, no, you know, I can't leave the house ever. I can't go for food. I can't go out drinking. I'm not like that. So like the goal is basically not to care less, right? Because that's wrong wording, but like, is not to like make your whole life about it, like, you know, say no to make memories, and you know, not going to meet your friends because, you know, it doesn't align with your goal. Obviously if you're dieting and you're in prep, it's a bit different, you know, but there's other things you can do that does align with you. Do you know what I mean? So like the sport should be part of your life, not your entire personality. The moment your worth becomes dependent on your performance, the thing you love starts owning you instead of supporting you. And I think that's so true. And you know, you'll end up fall out with friends, you fall out with family, because they'll try and say to you, like, you know, this might be a little bit obsessive for you. And I even see lifestyle clients like this as well. If they get into the like just the gym in general, they can lose loads of weight and stuff, and they feel burnt out because they've sacrificed everything, and you don't need to do that. And I know many coaches don't believe in life season for off season, but I generally do. So like, you know, especially when you go to like, you know, higher level, they do expect you to be pretty much on it all the time. But for my girls, like, I don't want them to be burnt out by their prep. So their off season, you know, I say to them, like, you know, macro track if you want a macro track. Ted, macro track if you want a macro track. Like, go out and have special occasions, like live your life, because you know, competing won't be forever. You know, some people won't compete for years and years. So you just need to make sure that you don't lose yourself in it. But I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm sorry about my dogs because Ted's been an arsehole today. And I can't wait to see you in the next one.